Hello, everybody. I hope everyone who has joined the webinar is doing all right. For whom it's morning, for whom it's evening, I hope you are enjoying your day. Welcome, everyone. We have gathered here today, as I like to say at the beginning of each webinar, to get a better insight into the change management and change management within angel organizations specifically. Change is always hard, and especially within the investment ecosystem, everything is changing very fast together with technology. And even angel organizations have to adapt and adjust and to evolve into something more innovative and something that works maybe better or adjusted to the current events. And we are joined today by three lovely people, Age, who will be sharing the frameworks for the change management processes. She has a big background in it and knows how to do it the best. And then Ashok and Diane will also share their practical knowledge on how they implemented specific changes within their organizations. So we will figure out how to do it the right way, and then we will know how it actually has been done previously. Welcome, everybody. I will be hosting your webinar. I always forget myself. I'm part of the DLM team, and I will be moderating. I'm very excited about this topic. This is not something I have huge expertise on, and I always hear that it's very painful to go through the change. I have been through the few changes within my organizations, so I'm also curious to know how you guys have done it and what is the best way to do it. For the listeners, the agenda is that we will do the technical, theoretical knowledge, the frameworks with Aga. Then Ashok and Diane will share their experiences. And then we will have a small panel discussion with a few questions. And at the end, we will do the Q&A. You can drop whatever questions you have in the comments below. You are listening and watching it on LinkedIn, so comments in the LinkedIn, we will see them here, and we will address, well, all of them or the best of them, most of them. So don't be afraid. Send your questions and we will address them. You can do it right away if you have some burning question about the changes that you're doing within your organization, or during the event whilst we will be talking, maybe something will spark interest and you will want to have a question. I think this is it from the rules of this game. I will give the word to our panelists to introduce themselves. I will start with Diane, as you are unmuted, so please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Diane Szoke from Charleston Angel Partners. I'm a two-time founder and angel investor, and very happy to be here to share our input.
Thank you. Ashok?
Hi, everyone. Good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. Ashok here from NuFund. I'm the executive director and co-fund manager. We're one of the largest investing organizations in seed around the country. Probably that makes it the world. To give you an idea of my change journey, I came in after making my first personal angel investment in 2017 to the organization. There was like 60 people. Today, there's over 300. We invest over $10 million a year. I guess we'll talk a little bit about some of the guiding principles of that change later on.
Great, excited. Thank you. Aga, now the floor is yours. I think you can present yourself, and also we can start with your part. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Aga, and actually since I have slides, then one slide is a little bit about me, so maybe I will just start presenting right away and then do it during this. Let's see. Ta-da. So, yes. So I'm okay, and I'm going to do something impossible. Just like Daria said, I have 15 minutes to bring you the essentials of organizational change management. Yeah, it usually is not even possible during the whole semester at the university. Let's see what we can do here. I will bring the essentials that I think are important, that come from that part of the theoretical world where my heart beats. So really quickly about me, I have loved organizations for about 20 years now, over 20 years. The people and the processes in it, at first more in the communication field and the communication climate, how people communicate, why are these conflicts coming up? Then I quickly understood that it's even more interesting and even more like appealing to understand what is happening during change. Like Daria said, it's painful often. And when I started my journey, then I thought, okay, I'm going to be, the angel, considering the environment here, who is going to bring painless change. Now, 20 years later, of course, I know that no pain, no gain. It means that the only growth that comes through pain. So it's not possible to remove the pain from the system. But awareness is something that helps us navigate it better, so that we don't sit on the same pin like 10 times before we understand, oh, I can get rid of that pain. And my research topics are in the field, like in change practices. It's more in things that people do, the processes, and less in people, which is really interesting considering I'm a people's person. And also structural inertia, structural change, communication, all these things. And I have been doing things. The theory and the research has always been like one foot where I'm in. My other foot is always inside an organization where I have been working in ministry and school. And now I literally a week ago stepped out of the Estonian University of Life Sciences, where for a year and a half I went to get an experience in trying to put the theory in practice. So yeah, I haven't had time to even reflect on that too much, but I have some insights in the end as well. So let's dive right into the theory part. It means when we think of what we do in organizations, in teams, or in our personal lives, we do something in some way, for some reason, with certain tools. And it means that we take some steps, either alone, depending on the practice, or together with other people. We do it, the whole thing, for some reason, but we also do the steps this way for some reason. There is a why written into it. There are emotions written into it. There are understandings written into it. And we have some tools, we have some rules, we have some habits. Some of those rules are, written, some of them are unspoken. And now if someone wants to change something in a team or in an organization, then this is what we're changing. Usually, I might say, it's more likely than managers who are thinking of implementing some change, they focus on some detail. For example, something that comes out has to be different. And I can bring you an example from my own study, where in the ministry, the minister came and said that, well, we have to remove one layer of management. But that was it. We want to make the organization a bit more flatter. Okay, nice, that was written down. But, and the people who were unit managers, their titles changed to deputy managers. But nobody told them, now what? How much do you think these people had changed in their ways and behaviors 4 years later when I studied them again? Many said nothing. They did exactly the same things. They still managed their people as if there was the subunit present. They didn't understand the change. So that's one thing. If we change only on paper, we change only, I don't know, the rules part, sort of, then, well, the result doesn't happen. And this is why I kind of believe, I know it's super hard to take every practice into pieces, but when you plan to change something in a team or in an organization, then it's super important to look into all these details. What we do, why we do it that way, and what kind of tools we use. Then we understand what we're actually changing. For example, if, I don't know, there is an organization, I'm sure there are many of those as well, who still do their client management in Excel, for example, and then the management thinks, oh, we need to bring in a CMS system, and well, yes, we're gonna use it, because then everybody has an overview, and then we have that person who has really smoothly used her Excel and says, you want overview? Well, come to my computer, look over my shoulder, see, there's an overview, you can see it. Why do you need some really complicated system? I don't want to learn to use it. Even though I might say this system change actually is a very good way to introduce change, because this is some hard stuff. If it's brought in, for example, the project that I ended just, it meant that we built a completely new website, not only a website, but a website of 11 websites of different integrations, different functions, completely new platform, completely new design and everything. So when that comes, you cannot actually keep doing things the way you used to, but they still stick to it. They still think that even though you have all these different fun ways how you can organize your text, they still want to use the open text where you just copy and paste everything like in Word. You don't put any titles in between. CEO goes mad, SEO goes mad, and then that's how we do it. And then Naga comes and says, no, that's not how we do things around here anymore. So it's quite difficult because we're so used to doing things. And if it's an older organization or older team, they have this is what the inertia is about. It's really hard to get them doing things differently if you don't dive into the system itself, and if you don't understand and get aware how we are actually doing it, why we're doing it this way. Is it good? And then, start moving. This is hard because understanding one practice and understanding which practice you're changing and understanding that practice, it takes this mutual, let's sit down, let's talk openly. Everybody puts their pieces on the paper or I don't know, on the big flip chart, whatever, and we understand it really, and then we move on. I don't want to complicate things, but I will now, because ta-da, practices never exist in vacuum in organizations or in teams. They're all connected. And when we want to change one practice and it's really well connected to everything else around it, then we can be as good as we get, but still it might not change because everything else keeps it tight. I will not dive into these connections that are written there on the slide, but to bring out some examples that came out from research that I saw very well that really can affect change is the change in this material, spatial, or physical world. So if you want to, for example, make people cooperate better, I don't know, as it was a structural change, then there were departments allocated to a different manager. And in one case, the department was also moved physically closer to the other departments of that manager. And it meant they had to break their old practices. They had all these habits with the other departments. They had to change them. So this is like it forces you to change. If you change something in the physical space, if you want people to cooperate, put them to sit together. And as I said, like also the systems, and so it's like the physical moving of the physical objects, they help a lot. In another case, for example, there was one department that hosted two different topics, and it was separated. And they left one person because there was no space, one person in the territory of this other department, and then nothing changed. They still kept asking her everything. She was so totally confused. Where am I working? It wasn't her department head, but he was giving her tasks. So it's a mess. So it can work for you and it can work against you if you either do the change or don't do the change in this physical realm. But to understand that they are all connected, and not just connected to the practices in the organization, but also with personal practices. Meaning that, for example, if you want to start, let's start our team meeting now 8:30 in the morning, then might take their kids to the kindergarten 8:30 in the morning, and the bus schedule matches exactly this timetable that it is now. And if you start changing somewhere, then this family has to rearrange their whole set of practices in the morning. So this is why we have to sit down with the people who are in the midst of this change, where we want people to change the ways they're doing things now, and actually go through with it, to understand it. And it's a long process, it's not easy. And another surprise, not maybe, is that the practices that we use to make the change happen are also practices. And some of them are like mutual, meaning that whatever change you take, you have probably your management decision-making practice, something that you are implementing using for the change to happen. You probably should. In the minister's case, they didn't use change communication, and they also need to be like extracted in the same way into pieces to understand how they work. Because sometimes, for example, in that studied case, in a structural change case, there is also recruitment practice that is important. But in case of what I was doing in the university, the web system change, the recruitment is not like the practice that was necessary for this change to happen. Although in some cases would have helped, but this is not what we're going to get into today. So with this recruitment practice, a year prior to the change, there had been a change in law, but nobody in the organization was kind of initiated into it. So we didn't have organization-wide discussions about what this law change means, and it was connected to recruitment to the public sector. And what happened then a year later during the structural change, there was a disaster. There was total mess. Nobody understood, was it like a real recruitment or a fake recruitment? Was it inside or an external recruitment? So it was mess. And it was created because only the law changed and the over-organizational discussions didn't take place. So all the habitual ways were still, for people, they thought that these things will happen the way they used to, and they didn't. So it's really important, even if the rules do change, laws sometimes change, and then we have to start thinking things differently. Then we have to sit down and think, okay, what practices are connected to that law? What are we really doing differently? And be aware of all these things. And I think the key message from me is that awareness is the key. And this is also my company slogan, that awareness creates freedom. Whether it's a personal change, or it is a change in team, or in an organization, and like organization-wide change, it still means that the more aware we are of where we stand now, the more easier it is to start moving. For me, it's really difficult to imagine change without understanding where we stand now. And so getting aware of all these hows and whys and the reasoning behind it, the tools, the rules, the habits, it's super important. Then that we understand it, how we're doing it, at least on some level. At least we sit down for a couple of hours and we discuss it. Or if it's a bigger change, we invite someone to help us do some qualitative research and kind of dig into it, because we don't have time. As a change leader with this project, I realized how hard it is to kind of drive all the goals. I had like little post-its on the table with my goals. To drive all of those four at the same time, it's super difficult. And sometimes outside help is needed. So yeah, getting aware. Am I on time or too fast?
You do still have a few minutes.
So I have some insights from the project. Should I share them now or later?
Let's keep it for the exciting panel that we're going to have. But thank you so much for the short presentation. My key takeaways is that you need to be aware that even small change triggers huge changes across you, and that you need to realize where you are standing now before moving and changing things, because without understanding the current situation, how can you expect anything else in the future to change? You don't even know what to change.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the practical examples. I can see Ashok is already ready. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dodra, and thank you, Aji. So Aji discussed some of the principles driving change. I think what I'll talk about is the why, which begins with awareness to follow her framework, and then what we changed into at NuFund. So the why, which again, my time goes back to 2016, 2017. The organization was around for 15 years until that point. So now over 20 years. And the driving force for change was really the macro conditions in the early stage venture markets. So much more investing activity going online, a lot more early stage accelerators, micro angels, and small VCs coming into the market, which was changing then the competitive dynamics for the classic angel group, which when I came in and NuFund was called Tech Coast Angels San Diego, it was very much a classic angel group. But the classic angel group model was breaking down. That was the awareness that we had. And again, this is, almost 10 years ago now. And I think there were a lot of organizations that then and now still did not have an awareness or an appreciation for the environmental changes taking place. So instead of being aware, they were more like the ostrich with their head in the sand. Whereas we felt like the conditions around the early stage capital markets and attracting the best founders was becoming more difficult, more urgent, and more volatile in terms of the nature of the changes taking place. We weren't getting access to the best founders. The reputation for the group was that it moved slowly. It was unclear how much it would invest, at what point in time. It dragged its feet a lot, and the organization itself was not growing. So the membership of the organization was static, and it was starting to get pretty backwards in terms of its operations. So a lot of pen and paper. The Excel example, look over my shoulder, that AG alluded to, was manifest in its own variations on a daily basis. So we needed to digitize the organization, we needed to formalize the management, and we needed to focus on capital efficiency, which doing just those three things would hopefully attract not only the best founders to invest in, but then the best people to participate in the organization. And that becomes a virtuous cycle and flywheel to then continue to attract the best people and best founders. So, fast forwarding into the what, like I said, today we're 5 times bigger as an organization than we were in 2016. And we've not only been able to continue to deploy tens of millions of dollars in capital, but generate returns in the millions of dollars in capital from the investments that we're making, primarily through creating an annual fund. So one of the biggest problems with angel organizations, and again, this still is relevant today, although things have changed for the better, I would say in general, is the checks were a process of herding cats and writing small checks into companies looking to raise $250,000, $500,000. So we created a fund we call it an annual fund within the group, where we pool money within the group once a year. Now we're in our 7th vintage. Each fund typically now runs to $6-7 million, and we hit the SEC cap for 3 years in a row on the number of members, which is 249. And then we write a single check through a democratic voting process after deal sourcing and doing our diligence, following a playbook that's also very prescriptive. And so if you're a founder, you're now getting one check for, say, $350,000 from NuFund, instead of having to roll up 10 checks for 20, $15,000, $30,000, etc. So that was a big benefit to founders, and to the members of the organization, it means that they could participate in a pooled investment, benefit from the wisdom of the crowd, cast their vote if they want to, and then get access to the portfolio that the group feels is the most confident through this screening and voting process. So we solved a problem for founders as well as one for members. Not everybody wants to be a startup stock picker. It's a very hard job. Anybody that's done individual investing, myself included, knows that you make a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of unpredictability. So having a portfolio of angel investments is also now proven to be the best method for allocating angel assets in terms of performance. Of course, there's still plenty of individual angel investments that can be very successful for people, and we still do individual direct investing as well, but it's a supplement to the annual fund, which leads. So when you look at where we were compared to where we were today, the organization is not an angel group. It's a venture fund. That's what we call our model, which, contrasting with the kind of fragmented, slow, uh, poor reputation angel group that, again, I'm talking about our organization, what it was not that long ago, to today, which is now professionally managed. Our capital is deployed efficiently. We focus heavily on technology, including DLM, to manage these workflows. So we're able to operate nimbly and efficiently, both for our members as well as the CEOs and the founders that we invest in, who at the end of the day are your customer. Um, those are some of the sort of structural changes that were manifested, but I think the culture that drove this change, understanding that the dynamics around us, both our group at an individual level, as well as the economy, and let's just say the startup venture landscape, were rapidly changing. And that appreciation created a culture in us to be entrepreneurial. We obviously didn't have the answers to some of the questions today that we've now answered, and we continue to always poke holes in our model and look for ways to continue to drive change. So I would say that it's a process that doesn't stop. It's not static, it's dynamic, but that culture that was strengthened through this change management process has led to an organization that today continues to reinvent itself into this venture group model.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting to get a glimpse into the new iteration of angel organization that you have brought about, and how it now more successful and operates well. So, well, happy for you. You went through the painful process, but it was very successful. Thank you. Let's move on to Diane and hear your story, how you implemented and how you changed.
Sure. So I'm Diane, Director of Operations at Charleston Angel Partners, and CAP is one of the Southeast's oldest angel groups, founded in the early 2000s. We're sector agnostic, we're founder focused, we're member led, with a mix of experienced investors and professionals. And what makes us unique, I think, is, at least in this region, is that we blend very disciplined diligence with a collaborative, community-driven approach. But until recently, our systems did not reflect that. So the problem that we had when I joined in 2021, I sat back and sort of looked at what was happening within the group, and I saw friction and fog, basically, at every touch point. So although we technically had a platform, which I will not name on this live presentation, it was clunky, it was not reliable, it was barely used by anyone. And most members basically bypassed it entirely. And so it didn't support the way we actually needed to operate as a group. Active members didn't access basic info like their investment history without asking for help, which always went to me. New members had no clear path to get involved, no onboarding and no orientation. Founders weren't even a part of the process. There was no way for them to stay connected or share updates or submit an application for funding. And our legacy members, who actually count our active members, they weren't just disengaged, they were completely disconnected for years because we didn't have anything. So the information we did have was siloed. Updates lived in inboxes, and docs, were scattered across folders. The system that we had didn't bring anything together. It was fragmented, and it eventually, led to both an eroding of our engagement of our members and the trust. So what did we do? We didn't just replace the tires of what we had, we rebuilt the entire engine. So when we started this transition to DLM, we knew the goal wasn't just to adopt new software, it was to build a better way of operating. We stepped back and asked, what do our members need? What do our founders need? What's going to make them actually want to use a system instead of going around it, which is what was happening. So this meant stripping everything down to the essentials. We centralized deal flow, our events, our key communications first, things that members really touch on a regular basis. Everything I was hoping to have everything be like almost a self-serve process, built for access, not just control. So members could find what they needed without a gatekeeper. I wanted to reinvent our community, basically. So we didn't force it. What we did do was give a reason for people to come back to DLM on a regular basis with clarity, transparency, and structure that we just didn't have before. And yes, we got help. We talked to other groups who were a step ahead and learned from what they got right and wrong. And it wasn't about digitizing what we had. It was about rebuilding the entire engine underneath it. So what happened? We actually had a huge engagement unlock. We stopped trying to fix the old system, and instead we built something that actually worked. It was connected, transparent, easy to use. And the result is 100% engagement from all our active members and 90% from legacy inactive ones, people who had not interacted with CAP in years. And I find from my previous work, prior to being an angel investor, that's rare air for any transformation project to get that kind of engagement. So now we have real-time visibility across our funnel. Founders are supported and members don't have to guess where to find anything. So if I want to leave you with one thought here, I think the transformation for us wasn't about going digital or digitizing things that were siloed. I think it was getting aligned as a group. And DLM gave us a platform to do that. But the real value was rethinking how we show up for our members, our founders, and each other. And so we went from being disjointed to reactive to connected and proactive. And the momentum keeps building, and DLM keeps moving along with us. So that's our story.
Thank you so much. A very inspiring story. It seems that you went through quite a journey, and probably it has taken you quite a long time. And I think on that note, it's a very good point to move our conversation into the panel discussion, or more me picking your brains and trying to understand how the process actually worked, and getting more insights into the things you have done to achieve what you have achieved. I think I will start with Diane and address the question to you, because I think it's a nice continuation to what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
What you have discussed, it seems like a huge process, and you had a lot of people involved, and you have to talk to a lot of other organizations as well. But if you take a look back at your members, change is always a complicated process, and it might be painful, and you can see some resistance during the changing process time. What was the biggest point of resistance for you, either from the members or from the board? And maybe you also remember some strategies you implemented and utilized to actually address the issues and convince them this is the way to go.
Yeah, so we did get resistance. I mean, especially in the beginning when I was pitching to actually move from the platform that we had at the time that I joined, there was great resistance. Initially from our members who don't like change, who don't love it. But that's fair. Some people aren't good with change. They were also not really familiar with actually what the processes were, even though they didn't want change. They didn't really participate in that. So it was, and I think also founders, when I started reaching out to founders, they were hesitant too, because, they already have to deal with multiple platforms that they're submitting their updates to or whatever. Sometimes they've got multiple ones. So we were basically asking them to use another tool, which they weren't really excited about. Nobody said, "Oh yes, another tool," for providing updates. So what we did was we didn't try to force the adoption. We tried to build trust by doing that diligence that I talked about, including calls to other angel groups who had also made the transition to DLM, mapping the platform benefits out for real pain points. I tried to, show them that, hey, we have this huge pain point. We can't access investment data. The updates are scattered. There were multiple tax headaches on K1 issues and stuff like that. So I tried to prioritize ease of use. And I knew that having a user interface that people, especially who aren't very technically adept, would respond to. And that was very important for me, because I thought that the UI could possibly tank engagement if it wasn't really good. And also I chose to roll it out in phases, starting with our highest impact processes. And I did that at a time when most people were already in the administrative frame of mind, which was the beginning of the year. And so I also used the platform itself, once we did start rolling it out, to prove its value, to show how easy it was to find out, what are my investments? What did I invest in 10 years ago? There are some people that don't even do that. So yeah, that's how I sort of approached the resistance part.
Great, thank you. I think it is, in your case especially, it was very important to draw on the experiences of others because they can serve as a good example, and also figuring out and bringing to the attention the biggest pain points, just so also highlighting how the change can address it and make everyone's life easier. I think those are good guiding points on how to convince people to that change is actually good for them. Thank you, Diane. Ashok, do you have your personal insight, well, organizational insights on how you tackled the resistance?
Yeah, well, I can relate to a lot of what Diane is saying, including, going back to, the history of the organization. And in terms of the process of change, there are big changes that we made. There have been small changes that rolled up into those big changes. One that's in our case, very evident on the surface level was the changing of the brand from Tech Coast Angels San Diego to NuFund Venture Group. That was intentional. Obviously, not having the word angel in the name was a debate that we had. It's not that it's bad to have the word angel in the name, it's just not the signal that we want to send, being a fund-led organization. In our case, again, I'm talking about, our model. Also not having the coast, despite the background image as I sit here in San Diego, but being from, Boston originally, the palm trees are not part of our logo. They were in the past more visible, literally and figuratively, in our branding materials, and now having that more agnostic, kind of feel to our logo and our name, signaling a fund first model, was very intentional. Now you can imagine, with some people being at Tech Coast Angel San Diego for 10, 15 years, it was received with resistance, and in some cases there was outright disagreement on the need to rebrand or what the brand should look like. But you're going to encounter that anytime that you implement change, and that's okay. I think being collaborative is the key, and listening to people's feedback, and then at the end of the day, reconciling that feedback and being deliberate in the decisions that you make. What I found is that people ultimately respected our process, and therefore they respected the outcome. And that's because they were involved in that process and they were valued. No voice was muted along the way. I remember one of our wise biotech CEO members shared during one of our many rebranding meetings that when he would come up with the name for his companies, which were very successful, everyone always hated the name until they decided upon it, and then everybody loved it 6 months later. And that, I think, encapsulates the experience that we had with NuFund, because we were collaborative, we were deliberate, and at the end of the day, we were decisive. And I think that's important too. You have used the word pain a lot, Darja, and I think that's appropriate in startups, both running a startup and running an organization that, you know, operates in the dynamic startup landscape. You have to be able to endure that pain. Or I wrote an article not long ago called "Strong Stomach for Chaos," and I was quoting one of my colleagues when we were giving a talk at Columbia Business School. Annie Mack is her name, and she talked about how she has been able to, in her career, succeed in startup environments, both at big companies as well as smaller companies. And it's having a strong stomach for chaos.
That is true. I think if you want to work with startups and the startup ecosystem, this is definitely what you need to have. But thank you for sharing your experience. I have went through the brand change with my previous organization as well, so I can relate to the pain and struggles you went through. I think it's been a few years, and I think some people still struggle with the change of the name. It's like fully changing your identity. But you did a great job, and I think you had a good insight that it's important to make everyone feel listened to and to make them understand that they are also part of the process and their input is valued as well. Thank you. And okay, maybe you can share based on your previous project that you mentioned before, and maybe some best practices if you have any. But I think as I'm starting to understand, it's also somewhat creative process of bringing the change because organizations are different and the situations are different.
Yes, I relate to everything you said here as well. But from resistance, yes. Well, the first part, when I went to the organization in November 2023, then during the first week, everybody greeted me with like, "Oh my God, we have been waiting for you for 2 years," or some people had been waiting for me for 5 years. Not me personally, but someone who would come and make the new webpage happen, because everybody was expecting. So I sort of landed in a really good environment, and resistance shouldn't have been an issue. But we started meeting up with the resistance from the moment we decided that, yay, what Ashok was speaking about, we didn't change the name, but the logo and the whole CVI. And you can imagine what an organization with over 1,000 people, university, where people have been working, some of them, or many of them, 20 or 30 years, what a logo change will do. That was a whole, like, it deserves a separate webinar to go through with this. And this was one part of the resistance. And I kind of pulled myself out of it because this wasn't my fight. My fight was the webpage. So, but I saw it from a side and I took notes. They will become part of my book at some point, I'm sure. But it was also, like Ashok said, the involvement of people is important. You just have to involve and involve and involve, even if they're really resistant and they just, for 2 hours, they fight you like not grown-ups do. And you just have to go through with it and be there for them because they need to get it out. Just, vent if you want. So that's important. And another resistant point was in the end, when we were actually about to go live, and it was an interesting live. We didn't have this like the platform live and then the content live. We did it all together, which is something that I do not how you say it. So I don't advise it to people to do it that way. When you go live with a platform, then first get the development and all the processes done, and then start with content. We did it like we were basically building a plane while it was already flying, and it was a challenge. We had about 100 people on board creating content to parts of all the 11 different websites, while not all blocks were even developed yet. So it was magic. But I was like a cheerleader up front. Yeah, we can do it. And then we did meet resistance at some point where people said, no, you need to have, first you have to give the structure, then I can put content in it. And I said, I cannot give you structure if you don't give me content. I cannot, structure air. I need to structure content, what you're writing. And then we're not going to be able to do it. The deadline is too close, and I didn't move the deadline. People worked hard, but we actually went live, and it wasn't so bad. And I think what one of my insights and learning points is that these deadlines in between, even if it's not even exactly sure what the structure will be in a website case, the deadlines in between are really important. I had one deadline for content managers, since we have like about 40 plus curricula at the university. Then the curricula we did already for the admissions of last year. I said that let's build them in the new structure by last year, and then it got done. If we had to have fought with that also at the end, then it would have been a disaster. could have had more deadlines in between. So this is maybe one thing. I'm thinking if there was any more resistance somewhere. Maybe it's not resistance. I will talk at some other point. But relating to what Diane said, like people don't like change. Yes, it's and connecting this to also awareness. What I talked about in the beginning is that when you have the resistance and the fear comes from not being aware, like not understanding things. And if you don't have information, if I don't know how I'm doing, and people want to change, even though I'm not even aware what's going on at the moment, then of course I'm afraid of it. So it's normal. And what you did, connecting the pain points to benefits and all this, that connecting this to people, this is super important. That this is what and involvement. But Ashok was talking about all these things are brought also through theory as very important parts of how to manage change. And yes, the phases, what Diane you mentioned, that is connected to what I said, like the deadlines in between, sort of. And here I feel that there is a connection between our experiences, that you can't like push through to the end. You have to be. And I really liked what you said about also this understanding that in the beginning of the year, this is where people are ready for change, because we're like, yes, we're going to do things new ways. So this is a very good point where to start. And from Ashok's also, what you said about the cultural change, I think it's actually in both cases, and in the case of my change process as well, that it starts from much more deeper than what we do, but the question is why we do it. And if we put the soul behind it and the values behind it, then we can make the change happen and drive it. Not just that we need. Sometimes I've had these leaders in past that they come from another ministry, or the school headmaster came from another school from Finland, and then I saw something there, I have an idea, we have to implement it. Why? What problem are we solving? That's starting from the wrong end. But if we start from pain, then we start from the right place. Yeah.
Thank you. You speak my language. So basically, you also, on top of everything, you need to convince people that the change is necessary, but you also need to have a clear structure and the deadlines in between how it's going to be implemented, which can also support the initiative. When people understand what's going to happen, then the change is not as scary. So the processes are very important. Let's cover one more question. I think this is more to Ashok and Diane. I feel that Ashok already has the answer to it because I feel that NuFund is living in the future. But my question is, how do you see the angel investment ecosystem and the organization changing in the next 5 to 10 years? You have taken a definite step into that direction and have reimagined how the angel organization can work, but do you see or predict any other changes that will come in the future?
Yeah, and I think there's a question on LinkedIn. I appreciate it. Thank you. Sounds like somebody who's been paying attention to us for a long time, so appreciate that. I think you're right that we're living in the future, but we're all living in the future because entrepreneurs live in the future, right? So we're in the business of seeing around the corner, not looking at what's directly in front of us, or certainly not in the rear view. That's the nature of the startup and venture landscape. So I think the principle is just appreciating that this is a constantly dynamic environment. I would say when I got involved, post my entrepreneur founder, prior career, multiple startups, things were changing pretty significantly, but now it's like 10x the amount of change, because there's a lot of other global factors and macroeconomic beyond the startup landscape that trickles down into the startup landscape factors, to name a couple, that are manifesting along with technology like AI. So the environment is just so dynamic right now that I think, yes, things are continuing to change, and recognizing that we don't have all the answers. I want to be clear about that. So, seeing into the future doesn't mean you know what the future is going to be. It means you prepare yourself to adapt and to live in that future, right? So there are specific things, of course, you can do to prepare yourself. So, one, in terms of liquidity, just looking at the question that was posed, most angel investors don't want to live in what I call angel purgatory, which is where you write a check for $25,000 and then maybe in 8, 9, 10, 12 years you get a return on that money, maybe, if that was a successful investment. So funds are one way to deal with that, because we create liquidity through a portfolio, and we've returned like $4 million plus from our annual funds since their inception in 2019. So that's one. But I think, what do I see changing right now? Well, the secondary markets and creating other alternatives of liquidity, even than just IPO, M&A, are probably becoming more of a strategy for early stage investors, to be able to recycle capital, to be able to return capital. So I think the duration and IRR is more important today as a consideration than just ROI, to name one change that I think we as an organization are starting to account for and prepare for.
Thank you. And Diane, what is your take on the future?
Yeah. One of the big ones that I see is, and it started to happen a couple of years ago for us, but we're all becoming borderless, basically, right? So platforms, whether it's Dealum or others, let investors from all over to collaborate on deals. So it means stronger diligence and more diverse perspectives, which I'm always happy about. I think data is going to change everything. So right now it helps. I'm only speaking for us, but right now it only helps us keep organized. But soon we're going to work on predictive tools to help us flag, red flags and surface, patterns way earlier in the process. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us. Third, I think capital alone doesn't really cut it anymore, especially in this environment where startups, especially in sectors that have lost their funnel for funding. So groups that win will have offer more real value, whether it's mentorship or support, or expertise to the founders, so that we can help guide them through these really tough times ahead. And then I think that there's also, I see that check sizes aren't necessarily, it's becoming more fractional. So I feel like check size might be smaller, and we might share diligence with other groups, and have more people participating in the ecosystem, which ultimately is better for the capital raising for startups, because we're all working together. So those are the big ones that I see. There were other ones that Ashok mentioned that I didn't want to reiterate, but yeah, I think there are other ways for us as angels to deal with the long lead times. I have to say we're really lucky in that, investments that we made 10, 15 years ago are now coming to fruition now. So we have 3 exits just this month, but they were long time coming. So, but still.
Thank you so much for your answers. I would say let's wrap it up on this point. We have covered the change process in itself. but also, as the last question brought to our attention, the fact that there are other changes that are happening that we have to deal with, and basically life always changing, and we need to have a structured approach to change and adapt to ever-changing environment, and also be more proactive and reactive to everything that is happening in the world. Because I do agree with Ashok, it seems that everything is constantly changing. Each year doesn't look like the previous one, and you never know what's going to happen within the next one. It's an interesting ride, very good time to be alive. Hope we stay without twitchy eyes and actually enjoy this ride. Thank you so much, Aga, Diane, and Ashok, for joining us and for sharing your experience and knowledge. It was very insightful conversation. And for the listeners, if you have been thinking or you're going through the change, I hope it gave you additional motivation and inspiration to actually do it. So thank you so much for joining, and now I will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day for the US citizens, and me and Naga can enjoy the evening. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take care.
Bye.